Have you ever really thought about what sets the price of your lunch burrito? Or, your rent? We kind of just accept these numbers, but behind them are these huge, invisible forces at play. But what happens when we decide those forces are getting it wrong? When prices seem unfair, and we try to step in and take control? And that's the big question, right? Why is it that our best intentions, trying to make things more affordable or guarantee a fair price, can sometimes just totally backfire? You end up with empty shelves where there used to be food or crazy long lines for an apartment. So let's get into it. Okay, so before we can figure out what goes wrong, we first have to get a handle on what right even looks like in a free market. And it all boils down to this one really powerful idea called equilibrium. Think of it as the market's natural sweet spot. Let's start with us, the people buying stuff. This part's pretty simple. We all live it. If a burrito suddenly costs, say, 20 bucks, you're probably gonna pass. But if it's $3, hey, maybe you'll grab two. This basic relationship, price goes up, demand goes down, that's the law of demand. Now, let's just hop over to the other side of the counter. For the sellers, it's the exact opposite. If they can sell burritos for a really high price, you're gonna see a ton of new burrito shops pop up. Why? Because it's super profitable. But if the price is super low, a lot of them will just say, not worth it. And that is the law of supply. So here's where the magic happens. You've got these two opposing forces, what we're willing to pay and what they're willing to sell for. And they meet right in the middle at a single point. That point is the market clearing price. It's the price where every single burrito made gets sold. No leftovers and no one goes home hungry. The fancy economics term for this perfect balance is market equilibrium. It's the price that a market, when left to its own devices, will naturally settle on. And it's incredibly efficient. There's no waste, no surplus, no shortage, just balance. But, and this is a big but, what happens when that efficient price for something really important, like housing, is just so high that regular people can't afford it, or the natural wage for a job is so low you can't possibly live on it? Well, that's when we start to say, you know what? Efficiency isn't everything. We need some fairness too. And the reasons for stepping in are almost always good ones. It's about trying to create a more just society, making sure people have the basics, protecting workers. The goal is to try and tip the scales back when the market's natural outcome just feels wrong. To do this, governments basically have two main levers to pull. The first is a price ceiling. Think of it like a ceiling. It's a legal maximum price, designed to keep prices from going through the roof. Rent control is the classic example. The other lever is a price floor. It does the opposite. It sets a legal minimum price. Think the federal minimum wage, which says you can't pay someone less than a certain amount per hour. Okay, so we've got good intentions, we've got our tools. What happens when we actually use them? What happens when we force the market away from that natural sweet spot, that equilibrium? Well, this is where things get really interesting, and not always in a good way. Now, here's the key thing to get about a price ceiling. For it to actually do anything, it has to be set below the natural market price. I mean, think about it. If the going rate for an apartment is $2,000, setting a price cap at $2,500 is pointless. But if you set that cap at $1,500, whoa, now you've changed the entire game. Because at that new, artificially low price, two things happen at once. First, way more people want an apartment. The demand just skyrockets. At the same time, landlords are thinking, for that price, I'm not so sure I want to rent my place out anymore. So the supply plummets. And what do you get when you have huge demand and tiny supply? You get a shortage. Simple as that. And a shortage isn't just some abstract idea on a graph. It has real-world consequences. It means things like impossibly long waiting lists. It means landlords might have less money or incentive to keep their buildings in good shape. And it can even create a black market where people start making secret, illegal deals to rent units for more than the legal price. This whole mess, this loss of economic activity, actually has a name. It's called dead weight loss. And a good way to think about it is value that just vanishes into thin air. It represents all the deals that would have happened, a happy renter finding a home, a landlord earning income, that are now completely blocked. It's a loss for everybody. The famous economist Milton Friedman had a pretty blunt way of putting it. He basically said, if you want a shortage of anything, doesn't matter if it's tomatoes or apartments, the recipe is simple. Just make it illegal to sell it for what it's worth. It's a predictable, almost mechanical outcome. All right, so now let's flip it around and look at the other tool, the price floor. The logic is exactly the same, just in reverse. For a price floor to do anything, it has to be set above the natural market price. Take the minimum wage. If the market wage for a certain job is, say, $12 an hour, a minimum wage of $10 an hour doesn't matter. But a minimum wage of 15, yeah, that's going to have a huge impact. So what's the result this time? It's the perfect mirror image of the price ceiling. At that higher, mandated wage, tons of people are eager to work. But businesses now see labor as more expensive, so they hire fewer people. You get this big gap between the number of people who want a job and the number of jobs available. And the surplus of labor? Well, that's just another way of saying unemployment. And all of this brings us right to the heart of the matter. This is the central conflict of trying to control prices. It's a constant, fundamental trade-off between the cold, hard efficiency of the market and our own human sense of what's fair and just. This table really just lays it all out, doesn't it? On one hand, you have rent control, with the wonderful goal of affordable housing. But on the other, you get the unintended consequence of a housing shortage. You have the minimum wage, intended to provide a living wage for workers, but the unintended consequence can be unemployment. It's the same pattern again and again. So that leaves us with this huge, difficult question. When the market is working perfectly from an efficiency standpoint, but the result feels deeply unfair to us as a society, what's the right move? How much efficiency are we, and should we be willing to trade away for a little more fairness? There are no easy answers here. But understanding how all this works under the hood is definitely the first and most important step.